Bihari. Jayam Vishnupad, Paramahamsa, Pravika Rajacharya, Shratar Shatra Shishimad, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki, Srimad Bhagavatam Ki. Om Vishnupad, Hare Krishna, Buddha, Srimad Bhaktivedanta Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. All right, so reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 10, text number 8. Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions. So the word for word translation. Yaha Adhyatmika Ayam Purushaha Saha Asau Eva Adidaivakaha Yaha Tatra Ubaya Vichedaha Purushaha Hi Adibhautikaha. Okay. Yodhyatmiko yam purushaha Shoshaveva ditaivakaha Yes tatrobhaya vichedha Purushoya dibhautikaha Yodhyatmiko yam purushaha Shoshaveva ditaivakaha Yes tatrobhaya vichedha Purushoya dibhautikaha Yodhyatmiko yam purushaha Shoshaveva didaivakaha Yes tatrobhaya vicheda Purushoya dibhautikaha. Okay. Purushaha. All right, so now we will do the word for word. So Yaha, one who, Adhyatmikaha, is possessed of the sense organs. Ayam, this, Purushaha, personality. Saha, he. Asau, that. Eva, also. Adidaivikaha, controlling deity. Yaha, that which. Tatra, there. Ubaya, of both. Vichedaha, separation. Purushaha, person. He, for. Adibhautikaha, the visible body or the embodied living entity. Okay, translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. The individual person possessing different instruments of senses is called the Adhyatmika person, and the individual controlling deity of the senses is called Adhidaivik. The embodied The embodiment seen on the eyeballs is called the Adibhotika person. Purport. The supreme controlling Sunam Bonam is the personality of Godhead in its plenary portion of Paramatma, or the Supersoul manifestation. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said, Ataiva bahunaiteva kim gyantena tavarjuna vishtabhyam idam krishnam ekam sena stito jagat. Okay. All the controlling deities like Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva are different manifestations of the Paramatma feature of the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, who exhibits himself in such manners by entering into each and every universe generated from him. But still, apparently, there are divisions of the controller and the controlled. For example, in the food controlling department, the controller of food is a person made of the same ingredients. Let me read that again. For example, in the food controlling department, the controller of food is a person made of the same ingredients as a person who is controlled. Similarly, each and every individual in the material world is controlled by the higher demigods. For example, we have our senses, but the senses are controlled by superior controlling deities. We cannot see without light, and the supreme controller of light is the sun. The sun god is the sun planet, and we, the individual human beings or other beings on this earth, are all controlled by the sun god as far as our eyes are concerned. Similarly, all the senses we have are controlled by the superior demigods, who are as much living entities as we are, but one is empowered while the other is controlled. The controlled living entity is called the Adhyatmika person, and the controller is called the Adidaivika person. All these positions in the material world are due to different fruitive activities. Any individual living being can become the sun god or even Brahma or any other god in the upper planetary system by a higher grade of pious work. And similarly, one becomes controlled by the higher demigods by lower grades of fruitive activities. So every individual living entity is subject to the supreme control of Paramatma, who puts everyone in different positions of the controller and the controlled. Okay. That which distinguishes the controller and controlled, i.e. the material body, is called the Adibhotika Purusha. The body is sometimes called Purusha, as confirmed in the Vedas in the following hymn, Sava Esha Purusho Nya Rasa Mayaha. This body is called the Anarasa, embodiment. This body depends on food. The living entity which is embodied does not eat anything. However, because the owner is spiritual or spirit in essence, the material body requires replacement of matter for the wearing and tearing of the mechanical body. Therefore, the distinction between the individual living entity and controlling planetary deities is in the Rasamaya body. The sun may have a gigantic body, and the man may have a smaller body, but all these visible bodies are made of matter. Nonetheless, the sun god and the individual person, who are related as controller and the controlled, are the same spiritual parts and parcels of the Supreme Being. And it is the Supreme Being who places different parts and parcels in different positions. And thus, the conclusion is that the Supreme Person is the shelter of all. Om Agyanatamanandasya Gananjanjana Salakaya Chakshura Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Tadasi Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shukta Padakamanam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Shashi Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatam Itam Tam Sajivam Savadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saritam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalitam Shri Vishakam Itam Shra Nam Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vikas Swami Nitanamane. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitanamane. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine. Nevisheshu Shunivari Pashkataras Tarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Yo yatmiko yam purushaha so shavevadidaivakaha yes tatro bhaya vichehida purusha yadi bautikaha. The individual person possessing different instruments of senses is called the adhyatmika person, and the individual controlling deity of the senses is called adidaivika. The embodiment seen on the eyeballs is called the adidaivika, adibautika person. Okay, so the previous verse, we were talking about, what is this here? This ashraya, so the supreme shelter. So the supreme shelter is the personality of Godhead. You know, there's that verse in the Chitta Sloka, I don't know the Sanskrit, but he's saying that one must certainly search up to it, the absolute truth in all places, in all times, in all circumstances, both directly and indirectly. Let me just pull that up real quick. Sorry. Okay, yeah. So a person who is searching after the supreme absolute truth, the personality of God, and must certainly search up for it up to this in all circumstances, in all space and time, and both directly and indirectly. So eva tad evam jignasam tattva jignasu atmanaha anvayam vyatirakyabhyam yat shat sarvatra sarvada. So sarvada in all circumstances. So the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the ultimate source of shelter. And, from beginning, middle, and end. And then before the beginning and after the end. Because in the spiritual, in the spiritual world, in the spiritual sense, there's no, beginning. They were asking, Prabhupada was listening this morning, someone that was asking other children in Vaikuntha, specifically Vaikuntha. Prabhupada said, no, there's no children in Vaikuntha, because there's no birth. Everybody's adults. Because they were asking, is there families? And it sounded like an interesting question. And then Prabhupada cut him off, said there's no children in Vaikuntha. So, but in the material world, there's children, because there's this aspect of time, beginning, middle, and end. And so being in the material world, one is under the influences of material nature. And these terms here, Daivika, Adi Bautika, and Adhyatmika. So Adhyatmika, Adi Daivika, and Adi Bautika. So Prabhupada would also explain these. Well, it's not. So one thing is, just like yesterday I was making the point, or maybe a couple of days ago, Bhakti Mesa was asking a question. He was saying illusion, and so I was saying, illusion, in the English is just whatever, it can mean so many different things. But when we look at the Sanskrit words, they're more precise. So there's Mahamaya and Yogamaya. So you say that, Mother Yashoda was an illusion. It's that can mean so many things. But then when you specifically say, the Acharyas, they comment in things, and you look at the Sanskrit, it says Yogamaya. So we understand that's under the influence of the Supreme Personality of God and his energies for pastime. So these different words, Adhyatmika, Adibautika, and Adidaivika, they have different understandings and different meanings. Specifically in this text, it's giving a definition of them. So the individual person possessing the different instruments of the senses, Adhyatmika. And let me see here. So Prabhupada makes a point. So the controlled living entity is Adhyatmika, and then Adidaivika is the controller. So at least in the purport, he makes the sense that here. Let me see exactly. But at least he's making the point that you have the beings that are controlled, and then those who are controlling. So specifically in that, at least in that one sentence, he's making the point that the demigods are the ones that are controlling, and then the living beings are controlled, which is a very important point to understand, and it's important also when explaining Krishna consciousness to others that we're not independent. And Prabhupada would really hammer that point with different people, that we're dependent in so many ways, that there's no God, that there's no supreme controller, but then we're dependent on, rain, we're dependent on the sun, we're dependent on so many things. We're dependent on, the nature, nature's providing, like even if, the rain is there, but then also like, where does salt come from? Comes from Walmart. So anyways, so that we're dependent on so many different things and for just to live and exist. And then what to speak of to being dependent on the demigods. We're dependent on society that we live in for protection, for food. That's why, Prabhupada was explaining that. I don't remember exactly when that was, but there was some famine or something, and then the communists came and said, like whatever, like ask God for bread. And of course, they were just being like atheistic as usual. So then they had the people that were starving ask God for bread, and then like nothing happened. And then they said, now you ask, us for bread. And so they asked them for bread, and then they gave it to them. And then they said, just see, we're supplying the bread. This is the demoniac mentality. But then Prabhupada would make the point that, where do they get their bread from? So the thing is that there's, in the material world, not just in the material world, but in creation and in existence, there's the controller and then there's the controlled. So this is the relationship there. And so Srila Prabhupada highlights that in the purport. He gives the example of the sun god, and then the individual living being. And let's see here. So that's there, and then the senses and things. So the overarching point of this text is mentioned in pretty much the last sentence, and the conclusion is that the Supreme Person is a shelter of all. So we have these different senses, and there's the control and the controlled. But then if we look at just like one, he may, the Vedic system, he may have, worship some particular demigod or something like that. And we see that with the Govardhan Leela. The inhabitants of Vrindavan were worshiping Indra, and who is that also? And then also Banasura was worshiping Shiva. And who else do we have? Those are the ones that come top. And then there's other instances also, but there's particularly those two. So they were worshiping Indra, and then, they worship Indra, and they stopped that worship, but then Indra went to attack the residents of Vrindavan, so Krishna protected him. So the point is, and then also with Banasura, he was worshiping Lord Shiva. Anyways, I'm shortening these stories and everything just to make the point. And when it came time for him to be protected by Lord Shiva, Shiva wasn't able to protect him. So a particular man may take shelter of a particular demigod or a very powerful person, but he's not able to be saved from the clutches of birth and death, or much of anything actually. Only by the sanction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead can one achieve true protection. So in that sense, the Supreme Person is the shelter of all, of the human beings and of the devatas, the demigods. And so anyways, Prabhupada opens the purport just how he ends it. The supreme controlling sunam bonum of the personality of Godhead. So anyways, he's talking about particularly the Paramatma feature in that first sentence. And then he makes the point that just by the Supreme Personality of Godhead's, a fragment of his energy, he's able to, and that's mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, that he's able to support and pervade the entire universe. And so Prabhupada makes a point here. I don't know the technicalities of it, but he makes the point that the different demigods, the different controlling deities, so the guna avatars, Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva, are different manifestations of the Paramatma feature, who exhibits himself in such manners by entering into each and every universe generated from him. So I don't know the exact verses, or I can't really explain that so well, but Prabhupada's saying that there. And and he continues, so similarly, each and every individual in the material world is controlled by higher demigods. So so that's an important point actually. We discussed that a little bit, but there's no point, if we actually analyze the situation, which we're actually independent. And if we study, the Vedas, and we'll get further in the chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam. I think it's this chapter. Let's see here. But in so many chapters, it'll mention more in details about, let me see if I can find a verse here that says that. But we read also, I'm not seeing here exactly, but that the different, the demigods, the different demigods, that they're in control of different senses. Just, I think it's like the Ashvini Kumaras. I may say some things wrong, but they're kind of in charge of just like the smell, maybe. And then I think, was this Varuna, the tongue, and then the sense of touch, I think, is Vayu. And then, being able to see like Surya. So all these different demigods are in control of those senses. And if there's some problem, with it, like, we can't see or whatever, or we can't feel, or whatever it may be, some disease, and that's due to the power of the demigods, actually. So it's not that we're independent in any sense of that. We're completely under control. And there's also in the 9th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, I forget the exact names, but there was one king that he asked, I think, Varuna a benediction for a son, and maybe it was Ashumand or something like that. And so he asked Varuna a benediction for a son, and so Varuna gave it to him. And then he was saying, well, then he had to like offer that son in sacrifice. So he's saying, well, we'll offer it like, at this certain age. So then that age came, and he said, well, it's not fit unless it grows teeth. And then it grew teeth and say, well, it's not fit like that, this and that. And then anyways, he was just like, whatever. He was just, what's the word I'm looking for? But he was just stalling time. And then eventually Varuna got fried out, and then he gave him some type of like, some disease. It's called like dropsy or something like that. It's like I think it has to do with like liquid, like in the like intestines or something like that. But anyways, after that, he kind of like, he appeased him, and then everything was okay. But the point is that the demigods are able to like, cause diseases and things like that. And so they have extreme power, actually. And so it's an important point to know that we're dependent. And then Prabhupada goes on and explains about the sun god, and and then all the senses we have are controlled by superior demigods. So the demigods, they're superior and they're controlling, but the thing is that they're the same. We're in the same category in the sense that we're both jivas. It's not that the demigods are, materially speaking, they're superior, but on the spiritual platform, they're not any superior. They just have a different post with different abilities. So the thing is that, we shouldn't, I don't think that we do, but we shouldn't envy the demigods in the sense that we want to like be like them or think, oh, if I had so much strength, it'd be so great or whatever. Because the thing is that the demigods, they have, more power, but it's not that they're, just because they have more power, they're more spiritually advanced. And we see cases of that. If, you read the 9th canto, and, one demigod is chasing after another demigod's wife. And then there's a whole, anyways, there used to be this show back in the day. It was called like Cheaters. So anyways, it was just like there would be like two people, anyway, it was like a girlfriend or boyfriend, a husband and wife. One goes and cheats on the other one, and then there's a whole investigation about, like that, the spouse who cheated. So there's similar things in the heavenly planets also, like that. And so there was a similar case, and one woman, the wife of a demigod, went off with another demigod, and then there's a war ensued. So it was a big, huge problem. And there's many instances of that. So even, the man on the street is struggling with his sex desire, and then the demigods and the higher planets are struggling with their sex desire. And the man on the street and the demigods, both of the situations are entangling and frustrating. And so anyways, that whole thing happened, and then there was a child produced, and then there was a fight for the child. And anyways, you read all this stuff in the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's in the 9th canto. And so Srila Prabhupada was citing this at one point. I think I might have that actually. But anyways, don't need to cite that so much. But he was mentioning that, and he was mentioning other instances in the Srimad Bhagavatam in which great personalities were bewildered by the sex impulse. And so this is a position, actually. Also, we see with Brahma and things like that, that'll be mentioned in the 3rd canto, that he was similarly attracted by sex desire. So the demigods, they're controlling us, but then they're also controlled. Because the thing is that unless we become a Goswami, controller of the senses, then we'll be a Godas, the servant of the senses. And so the demigods, they're similarly controlled by their senses. And there's also, too, there's an instance, I believe that's in the 9th canto also. There was one particular king who was, I forget exactly the details. I think Indra was out of his post for some time or something. So that king was allowed to be Indra. He was put up to that post. I think it's Nahusa or something like that. So anyway, so he was as Indra for some time, and he began to become attracted to Indra's wife. So there's another another existent, another thing. So we should never think that, that material desires are just going to disappear or just vanish, or even that we're above them or something like that. It mentions that point in the Brahmacharya handbook, that such and such is such a chaste woman or whatever, that I'm above this or whatever, or things like that. We should never underestimate the power of Maya, and we should also never overestimate our advancement in Krishna consciousness. Because generally, it's the inverse, that we underestimate Maya, and then we take ourselves to be more advanced than we actually are. And then as a result, problems ensue from that. Srila Prabhupada is quoted as famously saying that, so I think it's along the lines of that my American disciples are not enough afraid of Maya, the material energy. And then so also then we place ourselves as more advanced in Krishna consciousness. We think that, and that may be true, but, I have such great taste for Krishna consciousness, or I'm doing such amazing things, and Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement, and, I've been a devotee for X years, and, I've been chanting, and, I'm completely liberated, or whatever it is. We should never think like that, actually. I was hearing another devotee explain, but we don't read in the Srimad Bhagavatam of, great, exalted, elevated devotees, like, any of them, the Mahajans sitting and explaining that, I'm actually liberated, that I'm free from the influence of Maya. But we do see how they explain that they're under the illusory potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that they're very fallen, and that they're very sinful. We see with Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami that when they came before Lord Chaitanya, they had offered a particular set of prayers, and they opened that. How does that start? Nitya Jati, Nitya Sangi Kori, Nitya Kaja. What's that? Tamar Agrite Prabhu, Vasi Laja. I'm mixing up some words. Kaja Vasi Laja. So they're explaining that Nitya Jati, Nitya Sangi. So we had an abominable birth. So we had an abominable association, and we've been engaged in abominable activities. So that's what they're explaining. And so they've come to, in this very deplorable condition, they've come to the Lord seeking for shelter. So you don't see, they weren't coming to, saying, well, actually, we're great devotees, we're your eternal associates, and actually we're manjaris in the spiritual world and things like that. They weren't they didn't approach themselves to Lord Chaitanya like that. And then they go on to say they're actually more sinful than Jagai and Madai. So that's how they feel. And then we also see with Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he doesn't glorify himself in he mentions in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that that he was praying to the deity, and because everybody knew, and then that the deity dropped his garland and confirmed that, okay, like you write this Chaitanya Charitamrita. And then he mentions he had this dream with Nityananda Prabhu that, that he came and he, like that. Because it kind of goes with the point that he's trying to make. It's supportive to the conclusion that ultimately, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the shelter of all living entities, and we should surrender unto him. But anyway, so he cites these things, but then we see him say that he's lower than the worm and stool. And then similarly also, I think he plays that he's worse than Jagai and Madai. So the point is that these great elevated souls, even Srila Prabhupada and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, they always presented themselves as fallen and seeking mercy. So we can similarly learn from that also. And so, anyways, to go back, so this king, he was, being controlled by his senses, taking the post of Indra, he became attracted to Indra's wife. And so, anyways, I believe he began to approach her and things like that, and she noticed that. So anyways, I don't know if it was her or somebody, but anyway, someone gave him the great idea that, what you should do is that, you should get some of these rishis, these saintly people, and you should get them to carry your palanquin Oh, I think it was what's her name? I think her name Sachi is also her name, Indra's wife. So she told him that, okay, I will enjoy with you in my quarters. So, but what you do is you come to me on a palanquin and you get the great rishis to carry it. So he did that, and then obviously like he got cursed because you're engaging like rishis, great brahmanas, in your service to go and carry you like palanquin carriers. We can't imagine because we don't in America there's like no distinction between like what sensible activities and abominable activities. But like in traditional Vedic culture, there's particular, caste and like people that do certain things. So like to carry a palanquin like that, that's Sudra work. We see, if you look at the 5th canto, when Maharaj Rahugana realized that Jadabharat was a great liberated soul and a Brahmin, he freaked out because he realized he made a big offense by making him carry his palanquin, and he was chastising him like anything. The thing is, I mean, the Sudras, people that engage in Sudra work, generally like, they get chastised. It's like people, like whatever. If somebody's driving a bus or doing something, whatever, driving a bus or driving a taxi or whatever, or working at McDonald's, people don't have a problem saying like, you stupid, blah, 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 you nonsense, you're garbage, you're nothing. We get that sometimes we're on the streets on book distribution. But somebody's not going to go and say that to like a CEO of a company or whatever, Donald Trump or the president or like some big person. They're gonna be like very respectful and very nice, or their own boss. If they're working at a company, they're not gonna be like, you stupid, you nonsense. People usually do that like when they get fired or whatever. I'm gonna shoot you all. I'm gonna blow up this place. There was one guy that got fired at where my mother works, and so he got fired and he started threatening he's gonna come and kill everybody at the place and stuff like that. And then they hired a security officer or security guard. He never came, but the point is that that when we understand that someone's in a better position, higher position than us, and usually we act with some respect, and that's just natural culture. So someone who's carrying a palanquin is seen on like the hierarchy of things as not a very important person. Someone's important while they're carrying a palanquin. The person being carried in the palanquin is important. So anyway, so this king, he did that with some rishis. And so anyways, he got cursed to become, I believe, a snake. So he became a snake. And then so anyways, he was kicked out of the post of Indra. And then, he was what's the word? He was tricked by a woman. Anyways, so it was for a good reason because he was acting inappropriately. So this is the position. So the demigods, the point is that the demigods, they're in the superior position. They're controlled. They are not the supreme controllers. But they're given that position by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then so going back here, so we discussed, so Adhyatmika, so that's the individual person possessing different instruments of senses. And then the Adi Bhautika is the translation is the embodiment seen on the eyeballs is the Adi Bhautika person. So that's the body. So we have this body. And Prabhupada would also say that there's miseries from Adi Daivika, Adi Bhautika, and Adi Atmika. So Bhautika, so he would sometimes say the body, miseries from the body, whatever. That could be so many things. That could be, somebody's sick or whatever, your foot's broken or things like that. And Adi Daivika miseries are those, caused, wind, tornadoes, like that miseries caused by that tsunami, earthquakes. It's not that just, the important aspect to understand is that there's always some supreme controller behind things. There's a personality. We come to Krishna consciousness sometimes, and different people leave, but then they still carry the conceptions that they have in Krishna consciousness elsewhere. Just like, for instance, I had a friend of mine, and he was in Krishna consciousness for some years, and then he left Krishna consciousness. And, he was exploring different religions and things like that. And so then he was telling me that, he found these Buddhist literatures, and then there's bhakti and some of these Buddha things. So anyways, I didn't he mentioned that, and I didn't really inquire further. But the point is that because you came to Krishna consciousness and you were in Krishna consciousness for some time, you have some understanding of what bhakti is. If you just picked up those Buddhist literatures and tried to read them, you wouldn't see that there was bhakti in them. There wouldn't be any conception. You wouldn't know what, pure devotional service is. We learned so many different things from Srila Prabhupada's books of what religion actually is. and we associate with devotees. So we get a clear understanding of, what pure devotional service is. But if we approach those different religions, we're not going to have the same understanding at all. We're going to read, Buddhist literature or whatever, and it's not going to make any sense. But, we come to Krishna consciousness, and then we leave, and then we begin to look at different things through the knowledge that we've obtained from Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, and then we try to pull things out and like that and say, well, this is pure devotional service, and, Jesus is preaching Krishna consciousness here, and this and that and the other thing. But the thing is that we weren't seeing that before. Otherwise, why did we take the Krishna consciousness if there's, all this, bhakti being preached in Buddhism and, Islam and Christianity and things like that? So the thing is that, then also too, I know, and specifically in my own life, growing up so much in the West and, going to church, most of the time forced throughout my whole life, and associating with people that were, Christian and things like that. And no offense to them, but just speaking, from my personal experience, before coming in contact with the Krishna consciousness movement and getting an opportunity to read and study Srila Prabhupada's books, I can definitely say without a doubt that for a period of my life, I did go to church, for a long period, I definitely went and I wasn't interested. And I kind of just went because I was being forced to go and like that, and just to hang out with friends and just whatever, have a good time. But there was a point when I wasn't going to have a good time, but was actually looking for trying to understand something deeper, approach religion and understand God. And I did that for some particular point in time. I went to church and all that. But I didn't find anything, actually. There was nothing that really pulled me. And I associated with people and heard different classes and things like that and whatever, went on Sunday and different things, and then Wednesday and all these things, youth group and all that fun stuff. But I didn't really feel like any of my questions were answered. Then also too, just being interested in other things, philosophy and stuff like that. And just reincarnation and just the universe, and then just having it wasn't there was anything substantial, but there was there has to be other life out there except just on this planet. How is that possible? Things like that, and then we also see too that and then so anyways, kind of going with that. So then, it just wasn't captivating my intellect very much. And then also too, just seeing the different character of, some Christians and things. I wasn't too impressed by that, the idea. And, not all Christians are like that, but most Christians are that, unless you believe in, God or whatever, you're going to hell forever. Unless you believe in Jesus, you can't go to heaven. It's just and then that's it. There's no explanation. There's really no philosophy by that. Whatever God created, God said, let there be light. Okay, and then that. Then there's the thing. And then there's the Garden of Eden, and then it just wasn't making much sense. And then there was Revelations was talking about the end of the world. And then, that, and all these different things. And then, whatever, hearing different things growing up, anyways, I was, I guess I was just kind of whatever, any kind of Hindu, you kind of hear all the things going up and don't really make much sense. But I did at one point really look into that. And so anyways, but I wasn't really so impressed by any character that I saw. It seemed like anything else I saw at school, just guys and girls hanging out, whatever, eating pizza, getting drunk. It's just the same thing, but they're Christian. And then also too, I had some friends that were Jewish, and it was the same thing. Just getting drunk, having a lot of sex, and whatever. But they did that amongst the Jewish people, a Jewish boy and a Jewish girl. And then the Christians, they also did that. And then what else? And then Islam, I wasn't able to get so much into that because I only knew one person growing up that was Islam. And then it was some girl, and I would ask questions, but she wasn't really that into it either. She was kind of westernized. And so anyways, I looked into these different things and read some things here and there, but nothing really captivated me. And then also the character of some of the people and these things that, God, it didn't make sense that God, is sending people to hell forever. But then, anyways, and then there's, contradictory ideas amongst even in that sphere. And so, but one thing is that, even though one may be following that particular path, and I didn't really consider it until after coming to Krishna consciousness, but one may be a Christian and this and that, but then they still ascribe to atheistic views, that they're Christian and this and that, they believe in God, but they also believe in the Big Bang, and then like that. And then, so they're Christian in religion, but then their outlook on life is atheistic. So then it's incompatible. But coming to Krishna consciousness and reading Srila Prabhupada's books, it's very clear. And then just like Ali Krishna Prabhu was making that point the other day, that Umapati Swami, he came to Srila Prabhupada. Before he was saying that, heard this Buddhist, you can't say that it is, and you can't say that it isn't, and you can't say that it isn't, and whatever. It's just like word jackery. But then Prabhupada was saying that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the texts and the information that are given in the Vedic literatures are very clear. But for different reasons, we're not willing to accept it. But the point is that, that I looked through these things, and then, I understood that, this is very clear. All the different things that are being explained in Srimad Bhagavatam. Just read Bhagavad Gita as it is once, and I was just blown away by the information that was in there. I remember very clearly reading the Bhagavad Gita as it is. I read that the first time. I was just like, wow. I was completely blown away. There's so much, information here. It makes so much sense. I remember reading the Krishna saying whatever a great man does, common man follows. I mean, of course he's making that in the sense that, I think he's talking about Janak Maharaj particularly. But it's just even on the material sphere, if you just take material knowledge from the Bhagavad Gita, it's just, it makes so much sense, and it's so amazing. If you want to influence people in a good way or whatever, spiritually, of course, then it's if you have someone who's a leader, they're able to do that very easily. So, and then of course Srila Prabhupada and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur wanted to preach to the high classes of men so that they can influence the regular population easily. And so there's just so many things that in the Bhagavad Gita it talked about karma and reincarnation very simply, and it was very clear. There's very clear and very easy to understand. And then I also saw too that the teachings taught in the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam, that it wasn't just applicable to a certain time and place, because that was the one problem that I had personally with Christianity, that this path that is being taught, or this religion, or whatever it is, I couldn't really figure it out, what exactly is teachings, but what is being taught, it's only particular to a certain time and place. This isn't something eternal, because, people, 5,000 years ago, they weren't following this, and then in the future, maybe they will. And especially, too, if there's life on other planets, it's not, this isn't the path that someone can follow, because, Jesus is only on this planet. But then we understand that when we read the Srimad Bhagavatam, that is the process of Krishna consciousness, Bhakti Yoga. Krishna is saying, Imam Vishvate Yogam Proktabam Aham Avayam, that he spoke this knowledge to the sun god. So he spoke this information, Bhagavad Gita, to somebody else on a completely different planet under different circumstances, but it's the same spiritual science that he's speaking to Arjuna. That was 5,000 years ago. We're reading it right now. It's relevant now, it's relevant 5,000 years ago, and it was relevant billions of years ago, or whenever he spoke it to the sun god. So this is the nature of the Bhagavatam. And so unfortunately, Srila Prabhupada calls, not unfortunately, but unfortunately for us, if we have attachments in that sense, Srila Prabhupada calls, these scriptures, Malecha scriptures, like the Bible, like the Quran, and things like that, because they allow for an unclean way of life. It's religious, be good, treat your neighbor nice, don't have sex with that other person's wife, don't have sex with your kids. If you're going to eat meat, okay, but be religious. But none of the religions allow for, widespread hedonism. And so some of those allowances may be there, but it's for a class of people that aren't very spiritually intelligent or advanced. But then we don't see, so we don't have that vision when we approach it at first, but then we read Prabhupada's books, and then we come back, and then we approach the scriptures and all those things. We have that conditioning, and then we approach them with the same lens as we learn from Srila Prabhupada and Bhagavad Gita. But the thing is that, we should just stick with the information given in the Bhagavad Gita and in the Srimad Bhagavatam. But I've seen that multiple times, and I cited my friend in that instance. And so anyways, and like that, and then other devotees too go like that. But the thing is that, we can pull out some things here and there, and like, and this one thing, Jesus is preaching pure Krishna consciousness. And we may do that for someone that has some attachment. But Srila Prabhupada would always implore us to actually that we don't need to become learned in the Bible and all these things, but we preach from the Bhagavad Gita as it is. That's the, if we get in an argument with a Christian, it's not that we have to start citing the Bible left, right, and center. We can cite the Bhagavad Gita. They may say so many things, that, whatever. Like one of their famous things is, I'll mess it up, but that what's it called? That if you ever told in a lie, you're a liar. You ever looked lustfully at a woman, I forget what they say to that. Adultery, and then what's the other one? Steal, lie. Oh, steal. You ever taken something? You're a thief. So then you're, a lusty, adulterous, thieving liar. And according to the Bible, you go to hell forever. That's what somebody told me at the airport. So anyways. So then, so that's according to that. But then according to according to Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains that Sarva Dharma Parityajam Mame Kam Sharanam Vraja, that you surrender unto me, I'll deliver you from all sinful reactions. So anyways, you can get an argument that, the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita, this and that and the other thing, and then which one's supreme. But definitely we can say that, looking at the Bible and looking at the Bhagavad Gita definitely has more knowledge about God and who God is. I mean, that's anybody can come to that. And it talks about reincarnation and all these different things. There's no mention of these things. And then you may say, well, actually in the Bible and this particular thing and in this instance, it's you can say that that's reincarnation and this and that. But the point is not clear. It's very clear in the Bhagavad Gita that Krishna's talking about reincarnation. He's talking about the soul. He's saying not be attached to material things, that the sense pleasures have a beginning, middle, and an end. It's very clear. It's not elusive. It's very lucid. So then there may be a need for someone, if they're preaching, if someone's living in a Muslim country and they're preaching to Muslims, they may need to read the Quran. I think you're being chosen for that service. But they may need to read the Quran in order to explain it to the general populace. So that, because they may have questions and things, just for instance, I know when Bhakti Vikas Maharaj was in, Bangladesh preaching, people would ask questions about different things, and different Puranas or whatever, different pastimes. So we have to read those and understand those so we can answer people's questions. So of course we may learn things to speak to people that we're preaching to in order to help them understand Krishna consciousness better. But the thing is that it's just simply a tool that we use. But we're trying to bring people to Bhagavad Gita. And we're also trying to stick to Bhagavad Gita and to Krishna consciousness. So the thing is that before we came to Krishna consciousness, there was something the matter with our lives. Just like I was hearing one devotee explain the other day, it wasn't that for the most part, that people that come to Krishna consciousness, they were failures. He's making that point, that whatever we were doing wasn't working. We completely failed. So then we took up to Krishna consciousness. So it's the same thing. Our life before, everything was going wrong. There was, we weren't satisfied, whatever, with the situation that we were in, with the conditioning that we had, with our family, with our money, with our education, with so many things. We weren't satisfied. And so we came to Krishna consciousnness, and we began to feel some satisfaction there. And so if we want to maintain that, we have to keep constantly applying ourselves to the process of Krishna consciousness. And so Krishna consciousness is a great science. And and we have to stick to that science. And we have to have good association. All these things are essential to the process of Krishna consciousness. And so this information is given there. And then we read the books. It makes sense, and then we want to apply ourselves to that. And so we should apply ourselves to that. And we should be serious about Krishna consciousness. There may be so many other interesting things in the material world. But we should be careful, actually, because all these interesting things in the world outside of Krishna consciousness, if we go into those things, so many different things can happen, because the material world is a dangerous place. and we can get contaminated, and then we can get confused, and this and that, and then we can go off track, and then we're Krishna conscious, but at the same time, like, we're interested in motorcycles or something like that. Just like I know one devotee was telling me, that one senior devotee, anyways, I don't want to get in all the details, but it just like, he starts his japa chanting, Hare Krishna very attentively, things like that, with a picture, I don't know, I'm elaborating now, looking at a picture of Srila Prabhupada or Krishna, but then slowly the japa transgresses and for him looking at the picture of Krishna to him watching ping pong or something like that, matches. So what the heck happened? So the thing is, the mind is being deviated, and Krishna explains this in the Bhagavad Gita. I should know that verse by now. What is that? I think Bahushaka Yanantascha. I'll just read that verse, but he makes a point about one whose intelligence is many-branched. Let's see. Okay, here we go. So, yeah, there's that. But I'm thinking here, Bhogashvaya Prashakdanam Taya Prita Chetasam Vyavasatmaka Buddhi Samaldana Vidiyate. In the minds of those who are too attached to sense enjoyment and material opulence and who are bewildered by such thing, the resolute determination for devotional service doesn't take place. And then, like you were just chanting, Vyavasatmaka Buddhi Buddhir Ekeha Kurunandana Bahushaka Yanantascha Buddhaya Vyavasaninam. Yeah, so there's Bahushaka, various branches. So so the thing is that we have to be very ekanta, very fixed in our practice of Krishna consciousness. If we start going here or there, changing the practice a little bit, we may be in a circumstance where what we can do, we may have to wake up late, or we may not be able to chant around. Okay, but what we have to be, very focused, because as Krishna explains here, those who are on this path are resolute in purpose. So people that are in Krishna consciousness and they're all about it, like boom, that's it. And their aim is one. And then he makes here, the intelligence of those who are irresolute is many branched. So people that aren't fixed in Krishna consciousness, then their intelligence is here and there. And then there's so many things. Well, what about this? Well, what about that? Well, what about the moon landing? What about life? What about, the reptiles on this planet? What about this? What about that? What about our diet? What about exercise? What about this? Okay, or whatever. Then it's like, okay, fixed up. Yeah, brahmacharya for life. Fool, go. Yeah, this, that. And then next day, well, what about marriage? What if I can't be a brahmacharya for life? And then it's like, nobody's telling you to be a brahmacharya for life, bro. It's like, and then there's this whole thing, and it happens in Krishna consciousness. It can happen for years, actually, that, association is great, prasadam is great, everything is great, service is great, but there's just like something the matter in the mind. And then it's just like, everything's good, everything's great, and then one devotee in the temple like slips out a cuss word, and then it's just like we're tripping out. Well, maybe they're not pure devotees because that person said that, and I saw that, this, that, and the other thing, or whatever, or like what, this person is doing this person doing that. It's just like chill out, man. It's like you on the mental platform. There may be so many things wrong, and then we see too that people are like that, and then they leave, and then they start criticizing the devotees. Bhakti-Vikas Maharaj makes that point, and I've also seen it too. All these different devotees, they're devotees for some time, and then they leave Krishna consciousness, and then they write their books about their experiences of Krishna consciousness, and then they just criticize the devotees like anything. That this person was motivated, and this person's a liar, and then they did this to me, and then they made me be, a chaste wife for 10 years, and this and that, and I was a brahmachari, and like I could have been like rich and famous, but they told me like, don't go to school, that's for dogs, and I was manipulated, and blah 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 blah. But the thing is that you never had that resolute determination to begin with. And whatever, and so we should take the message of Krishna consciousness to heart, and we should follow, and strictly, and and we should aim for that, and we should have faith. Just like Prabhupada makes the point in here, faith means unflinching trust in something that's sublime. So that's Krishna consciousness. There's nothing sublime in the material world. Sublime is like this great awe-inspiring thing. You have to define, because some people think Sublime's a band. So the band Sublime is not sublime. What do they just? Anyways, they just sing about getting high. So, and then people think, there's nothing awe-inspiring in the material world, but the most sublime thing is Krishna consciousness. Because we read about that, you hear about the spiritual world, how amazing it is. It's completely blissful, Every step is a dance, every word is a song. Who's singing in the material world? Nobody's singing. Everybody is crying. They're crying, and then they're singing these songs, to help alleviate the pain in their heart. So we should have faith in something amazing, and Krishna consciousness is amazing, and we have to read the books and scrutinize the things, studying it to understand that actually, Srimad Bhagavatam is a big book. We don't read it just once. We have to read it multiple times to actually understand what's being talked about. Because we read the whole Bhagavatam once, then we kind of become a little bit familiar with the concepts and the progression and what's being explained. Just like this verse right now that we're discussing today. It's anyways, not to pick on anybody, but maybe some of you that just read the Bhagavatam at one point was kind of be like, okay. But we understand that, it's referring to the verse previously. It's mentioning about the what's it called? The supreme shelter, the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead. And then the next verse is explaining, okay, I'll just read it. So all the three above mentioned stages of different living entities are interdependent. In the absence of one, another is not understood, but the Supreme Being who sees every one of them but the Supreme Being who sees every one of them as the shelter of the shelter is independent of all, and therefore he's the supreme shelter. So then it ties it in that, okay, like that. And then we understand, what Sukadeva Goswami is explaining and why it's explaining it, and then kind of it explains more. So it's not that we just read the books once, so we have to really study it. We have to be, focused. And if we're not reading the books, then we're hearing the classes. But we have to dedicate our lives to understanding the science of Krishna consciousness. And that's blissful and that's ecstatic. And then we can think, trust, faith means unflinching trust in something sublime. And so that may manifest for different people, And it's we should be realistic about where we're at in Krishna consciousness, just like I was speaking in the beginning of the class, that that we should understand that, okay, we're in this position, we have material desires, some of us have this attachment, for instance, maybe some of us can go into a liquor store and it's whatever, we don't care, because it's we don't have attachment for liquor. But then some of us, that go into whatever, like a festival or people, women are running around naked and it's whatever, maybe we're above that, as well, we get disturbed or whatever it is, or vice versa. So we should understand where we're at. But at the same time, okay, we have conditioning, okay, we're fallen, like that. But we should also have that strong faith, within our hearts and in Krishna consciousness that, that the spiritual world is amazing. We read those different descriptions. Krishna's tending cows. There's so much milk coming out of the cows that it's there's Sweta Dweep. The planet is, it's surrounded by a milk ocean. The spirit, that's another name for Goloka Vrindavan. And that, if I just stick to Krishna consciousness and I really execute the orders of my spiritual master, and I'm sold out to the Sankirtan mission, then in my next life, or maybe somewhere down the line, I can be in the association of great devotees, like Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or Nityananda Prabhu or Dvaita Acharya. I can be in kirtan with all of them, or if I really if I really surrender this life and give everything, then maybe someday I can serve under Srila Prabhupada or something like that. Or in another universe I could be Prabhupada's servant or whatever it is. It's we can have faith. That's the kind of faith we should have, and that's inspiring. Material world's miserable, material world's horrible. Okay, but then we have that alternative, that the spiritual world's so great, that the spiritual master's so great. Or maybe if I really just give everything I got for Krishna consciousness, and I really pray for Krishna's mercy, he'll give it someday. And then the material world become like the spiritual world. And then one Acharya says that actually, that he, I'm forgetting exactly, it's mentioned in the 6th canto, but he's saying that in the material world, I don't have any miseries or anything. All there is bliss, because he's completely absorbed in Krishna consciousness. So we should have that faith and trust in something sublime. And that'll inspire us also in Krishna consciousness. Now that we're just sitting there and we're just, the thing is that we follow the process, then we can have inspiration into that. Now that we're just sitting there and, all we want to do is kirtan and all we want to do is hear Krishna's pastimes. We don't want to do anything else. So we follow the full process properly and all those things. Then we get that inspiration. And also too, if we're following properly, just like we read in the previous chapter, the descriptions of Vaikuntha Loka, that's also inspiring. Not that, we don't have nothing to do with that. That's not Goloka Vrindavan. That's just, that's because those are pure devotees engaging in pastime with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's amazing to hear. So we should have, unflinching faith, trust in something sublime. And there's nothing as sublime as Krishna consciousness. And so that'll help our intelligence be resolute. Because that's the thing, in the material world, if you want something great, you got to work for it. Nobody's, just, whatever, taking an online class in a week and then, getting their PhD. That is not happening. Or somebody, whatever, we think, well, I'll just be recognized because I'm so intelligent, and then they'll give me an honorary degree in, molecular mechanics or whatever it is. I'm just like making up stuff. Or I'll get, whatever, atomic physicist, I'll be recognized as that. I'll read like 1 or 2 books and then I'll be good. So anything that is of any value in this material world is achieved by much hard work, endeavor, and success. That's just basic understanding of material life. Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, all these people, they didn't become billionaires just by whatever, like playing in the garage and like, whatever. I mean, back then they've had, what an Atari is? Yeah, they're playing Atari, some video games or whatever. They were working hard. So anyways, all my past some scars are coming out today. So I never played an Atari, but I know what it is. But anyway, or whatever. Anyways, I won't go any further with that. But so they worked hard. That's the point. So the same thing with Krishna consciousness. We have to work hard. We have to be determined, and we have to be fixed. We have to have good association. They don't waste time, and that's the thing. Pure devotees don't waste time. Bill Gates ain't wasting time. And I heard Gokul Chandra Prabhu, one of our senior godbrothers, talk about that there's one, I think it's Bill Gates, but some rich and famous guy, that he eats at a particular point in time every day. He only eats a certain amount and this and that, and he has a certain amount of time he allows for emails and this and that. He has he don't waste a minute. And I think he has somebody else that he asks what's the time and things like that, and they take care of all this other stuff. So he's got somebody that's taking care of all that because anyways, he's fired up to make money. So the thing is, we understand the fallacy of all these things, that we should be very inspired in Krishna consciousness. And if we're not inspired, then we should pray to be inspired. And we'll be inspired if we read Srila Prabhupada's books, because Srila Prabhupada's inspired in Krishna consciousness. And then that'll rub off on us. And devotees that are surrendering their life to the Sankirtan movement for Krishna consciousness, for being a devotee, we can associate with them, and that'll rub off on us also. But we read Srila Prabhupada's books, and he's fired up about being Krishna conscious, so we should read those books, and that should rub off on us. And that's one of the main things, actually. So we read the Shastra, and we study all these different things, not to, not to make some fancy display of Krishna consciousness for the entertainment of ourselves and for others. So we read the Shastra to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and we also read it for purification. And so part of that purification, that it inspires or awakens something within us to be Krishna consciousness. So what is this? So anyways, there's a couple things there, kind of end there. But that's the point, that, if intelligence isn't fixed, then we'll be here, there, and everywhere. And then, and then we'll be Krishna conscious sometimes, and we won't be. But when we have that fixed determination, then something may happen that's really disastrous in our life, because we will be challenged in Krishna consciousness. But whatever that obstacle is, or whatever our doubts will be, we won't be swayed to go and do something else. We'll be fixed. We'll say, okay, I don't understand this, but I'm going to keep going anyways, because maybe I'll understand it someday or whatever it is. But but I've understood. I may not understand this, that, and the other thing, but I've understood that Krishna consciousness is the top goal of life, and I'm gonna stick with it no matter what. And so many things may happen. What do we do? Anyways, we don't have to worry about this. But different devotees had gurus, spiritual masters who left Krishna consciousness. That's something heavy, and that shook different people's faith. But there was those that stuck through it because they had faith in the process of Krishna consciousness. And so many things. There's people that were kicked out of temples, and like that, and beaten up and things. There's some heavy things that people have to go through. And then we see, that happened. But Haridas Thakur, he was whipped and so many things, marketplaces. He wasn't sitting there thinking, how could you do this to me, Krishna? I'm your devotee. He wasn't saying like that. So we may get whipped. Some heavy stuff. We may get shot. We may get killed, trying to practice Krishna consciousness or preach it. So, but the thing is that Krishna will always protect our devotional service. And maybe we get killed in this life preaching and spreading Krishna consciousness. But then maybe who knows what will be in our next life? Maybe way better situation, better association. We may go back to the spiritual world. We don't really know, what's going to happen. But if we have that faith in Krishna consciousness, then we'll be able to see that every single circumstance that happens in our life is an arrangement of Krishna, and we'll be Krishna conscious in all circumstances. So, Hare Krishna. If there's any questions or comments about Adi Bhautika, Adi Daivika, or Adi Atmika?
Prabhu actually had a question directly about that. I mean, I've heard it explained before, the correlations between these three terms.
Yeah.
I was having a hard time understanding the way Prabhupada was explaining it
In here?
translation.
Yeah, he's explaining it differently. So the thing is, if you look at Bhagavad Gita, so he explains, that's the thing, with Sanskrit words, they can mean different things. So generally, one important thing, so Prabhupada, Tapatraya, which means threefold miseries. So I think another explanation of those is, I'd have to look at it exactly. I didn't get much time to look into this, but he refers to Adi Bhautika, Adi Daivika, and Adi Atmaka Klesha, which means like miseries. So kleshas is out. He like generally translates that to here. Where here he's just kind of talking about, here he's just kind of talking about like the philosophical principles, because you see also in Bhagavad Gita. I'm just going to read through some of this. So if you look at the 7th chapter, I'll just do this really quick. So Adi Bhuta, right? So Bhautika. So Adi Daiva. This is the last verse of the 7th chapter. So Adi Bhuta Adi Daiva Mam. So Adi Yagyam Chayevadu. Prayana Kale Pichamam Tevid Yor Yukta Tetata. So Adi Bhuta, Prabhupada translates it, the governing principle of the manifestation. Adi Daivam, the governing demigods. Anyway, I'm just citing this briefly. So Krishna says, those who are in full consciousness of me, who know me, the Supreme Lord, to be the governing principles of the material manifestation of the demigods and all methods of sacrifice, can understand and know me at the time of death. So the point is, in the next chapter, Arjuna asks an explanation about, like, what's he talking about, like these things. So anyways, our philosophical principles. Arjuna asks, what's Brahman, what's the self, Adhyatmaka, as we were discussing here today. Adhyatmaka is the person. And then Adi Daivika, he asks this to Daivam, the demigods. So then Krishna explains that in the eighth chapter. And then so Krishna says here that the indestructible transcendental living entity is called Brahman, and the eternal nature is called Adhyatma, the self. So anyways, they're just like philosophical principles. They can mean like different things with Sanskrit. So it's really complex, and there's a lot to it actually. And I didn't do so much justice in covering all those things today.
I thought you did a great job, but the analogy Prabhupada gives in the purport was also really interesting.
Yeah.
The food controlling department.
Yeah.
When I heard that, I was like,
That confused me actually.
hard for me to understand. Actually. For example, in the food controlling department, the controller of food is a person made of the same ingredients as the person who is controlled. There's obviously some really deep meaning to that I can't really perceive.
I was thinking it was like what's it called? Anyways, yeah, there could be a lot of things. Maybe like the individual beings and the demigods. Well, he says that, it could be many, yeah, but like you're saying, some deep meaning there.
I wanted to ask something else too. I mean, the whole goal is to become Krishna conscious.
Yeah.
And I was thinking lately, like, seemingly enough, there's so many forms and ways we can obtain that.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, like, wow, I mean, I'm chanting the Maha Mantra, and I'm taking a vow to do so, and that's wonderful. But I'm not really thinking about Krishna so much. I mean, I'm thinking about devotees.
Yeah.
There's so many ways and forms where one can take shelter with
Yeah.
Krishna consciousness movement. I mean, you could be chanting your rounds, and I mean, you shouldn't be doing that, but you could be just meditating on Haridas Thakur.
Yeah.
And you'd be going throughout your day, and you could be thinking about Advaita Charya.
Yeah.
You could be driving the car, you could be thinking about like Lord Nrsimhadev.
Yeah.
I was like, my attention isn't like just all super focused on like just Krishna.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if it's a bad thing or not, but like there's just so many like, I mean, we can think about our spiritual master, we can think about Srila Prabhupada. It's just like there's so many outlets and like ways to like invest one's devotion. But I was like, man, I should be thinking about Krishna in Vrindavan more. Like Krishna
Yeah.
isn't original form.
Yeah.
There's just so much out there. Anyways, it's just like a little reflection I had. But
Yeah. We may be thinking of so many different things, but it's just, like that, maybe to use a mundane example, or maybe not. Anyways, let's stick transcendental. But, Krishna makes a point in the 8th chapter, Mam Anusmara Yudhyacha, that, think of me and fight. He tells Arjuna. So Arjuna is fighting, but it's not like, when he's like fighting, he's not like directly, he's not thinking like, Krishna's like lotus feet and things like that. He's thinking like, okay, there's this person here, I have to aim my arrow here or whatever, I have to chant these mantras, and I have to like kill this person. And it's like that, and then it's just like ducking, and then like, this person's gonna do this, and then, whatever. It's like a whole thing, like when you fight is like completely absorbing actually. So it's like, he's gotta be on that. But the thing is that, at least that our lives are like completely like dedicated like to Krishna and his devotees. So in that way, like everything we're doing is like for the pleasure of like Krishna and his devotees. Provided that like, process and everything. Anyways, I don't want to get like how, anyways, we have to understand what is devotion and what is not devotion. But the main thing is that, it's, we may not be like sitting and like, Krishna all day or whatever. Just like I sent you that thing the other day.
harmonica.
Yeah, there was one guy that like, he had like, taken like a harmonica thing and he put a picture of Krishna up in front of it. And so he was just looking at Krishna all day. Those things dying on. And so he, anyways, so it's like, it's not such a superficial thing, thinking of Krishna. There's like purity at heart and things like that. And then there's a whole attitude that comes with it.
I heard that fellow didn't last very long.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so it's like, serving the devotees and doing these different things. The thing is that they're devotional activities, and Krishna's pleased by that. And so the thing is that we may not be thinking of Krishna, but if we're acting in the proper way, Krishna will be thinking of us. And that's the main thing. So.
This isn't working. You can just maybe briefly repeat what
Yeah.
you said for the stream. But like, it's talking in this about demigods controlling the senses.
Okay.
So like, I've heard different stories. I can't think of any in particular of this happening. With, like devotees that like they're making advancement and then like demigods try to stop them basically because they're like worried about their position.
Yeah.
What are some, like, one I heard was like Haridas Thakur, the Maya deity sent to him. What is that story?
Yeah. Okay, so just repeat the question. So the question is about demigods controlling the senses and about Haridas Thakur. So that story with Haridas Thakur, there's two. So one is that the material energy personified came and tried to allure him. And the other one is that a prostitute was sent by, I think, Ramachandra Khan or something. He was like someone that was like envious of Haridas Thakur.
With Maya, the personification of Maya coming, why?
Just a test, yeah, kind of to like glorify him. And she also, I believe, is described that she wanted the holy name from Haridas Thakur because she received the holy name from, I think, Ram from Shiva, her husband, but she wanted to get Krishna Nam from Haridas Thakur. I think that's there. I hope I'm not speculating. But I mean, it sounds like something that I heard. I don't think I just made that up just now. So, but and making them fall down, or?
Yeah.
Well, it's mentioned in the Bhagavatam that in 11th canto that the demigods, I'd have to find it exactly, but sometimes they may send an obstacle on the path of like a devotee to like deter his progress. So the thing is that the demigods, they can offer things to like allure us, but if we take shelter of Krishna, we can overcome that. And the thing is, it may be like as a test. And other ages, like we would see like, like if someone like Vishwamrita, for instance, and then also, I'm trying to think of somebody else. But because it's known that like somebody's like doing these sacrifices or whatever, or like doing some meditation, and they can get Indra's post. So the Indra may get like envious and like deter that person. But yeah, like how that looks and everything, I don't really like understand that 100% about like how they're controlling and how they're like sending off and things like that. It seems like they're just like alluring. But we see the example that those that are fixed in Krishna consciousness are not like taken away by that. Like Markandeya Rishi was meditating, and the different demigods came, and it was a couple of them, and then they like try to allure him, and then they thought when like the lust, like whatever, it seemed like that opportune moment for like lust to arise was there. They like Cupid shot his arrows, but then nothing like happened, and so that's because like they're not under control of the demigods. One who's under the control of the demigods, and he can be like influenced in that way. So, anyways, a couple thoughts on that. Yes.
Quick question. Alright. So you made the point about like never believing ourselves to be like supremely advanced in Krishna consciousness.
Yeah.
Sense of like thinking that like we're falsely above mind, because then as soon as we think that, we underestimate her.
Yeah.
Might fall victim to that. So, and of course, like the demigods not really being above
Yeah.
everybody as well. So I was hoping you could speak on like that proper display of humility, and then like delineating between like what is false humility, like so you can kind of clear that up. And so it's not like, I just want to understand like how would you define false humility, and like not being like not presenting themselves like, oh, I'm so fallen, I'm so this, but like
Yeah, okay, false humility. So the thing, so we shouldn't think that, whatever, we're so advanced in Krishna consciousness. So then there's all the time, I'm so fallen, I'm so attached, I'm so weak, and things like that. So the thing is that humility, so I think we just give some example. So let me try to think here, back here to something. So like false humility could be like, oh, you're like, Prabhu, like I'm so fallen and like I'm so attached. So like, can you please give me some like instruction to help me? Okay, and then like, okay, so like whatever, you're doing this wrong, and then you tell that person, and they just snap back and like, like I'm doing this because of this, that, and the other. So it's like they're like playing, they're like being humble and like I'm fallen and I need help, I need Krishna's mercy. But then you try to give them that mercy, and then they just snap back. So I think it's like false humility. One thing too is like, I think Bhaktivinoda Thakur mentioned that humility means to uphold the verdict of Shastra. So one who is always like upholding to what the Shastra says and speaking on that is also humility and following that. But the main thing is that, the humility in a sense just means that we recognize that we're not great and we're not amazing. And that's, we're not puffed up, because we see like, someone may be saying, oh, I'm so fallen and this and that, but then it's like, but then they're fallen, but then, they talk about how great they are or how smart they are or like how much money they have or things like that. But they glorify themselves or something like that. Or, like it can kind of be seen. I mean, we may not be on that level where we actually like think that, we're actually like, we really feel that like we're humble or we're fallen or whatever. But like we should try to like imbibe that mood. But not that we're always like talking about how like fallen we are and this and that and the other thing. But the main thing is that we should have that mood of understanding that like we're not great, we're not supreme. So it's kind of like a couple like quick things about that.
I got one more thing.
Yeah, one more thing.
So, because you talked about also true religion, and essentially that which is like eternal versus that which is like temporary or sectarian,
Yeah.
and like certain set circumstances in place and whatnot. So there was one point, Mahosa Prabhu, we were taking Prashadam, and I don't remember exactly what I'd said, but he had made it clear. It's like religion and spirituality are two different things. So I was hoping
Yeah.
like what is the, I guess, like supreme distinction between the two?
Well, I don't understand the context that he said that in, but we understand from Shastra that like there's Sanatana Dharma, which is like one's eternal occupation, which is devotional service and like serving Krishna and hearing and chanting about Krishna. And then religiosity is like maybe like doing some activity that's like pious or mention the Vedas or some charity or something like that. But it's on the material platform. I get material results from doing that. Like if I give like charity, then I get that back. Or if I, whatever, feed the homeless, then that's like good for me. So that's like one simple explanation, like that. So, alrighty. Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki. Friday.